I would almost feel like this fluttering in my chest and like immediately felt like I was going to pass out.
A flutter in her chest that kept coming back. It turned out to be the key warning sign that saved her life. Good morning. It is Thursday, February 2nd. I'm Jessica Lovell. Welcome to the Morning Medical Update. Right now, without even thinking about it, we are all relying on our hearts to keep beating. But what if that beat goes into overdrive? It happened to a Missouri mom during her regular morning routine. Alexis Del Cid has her story.
Running is what gives Brittany Claborn peace.
I have been a runner since college.
It's how she starts every morning before heading to her third grade classroom at Carterville Elementary. We catch up with her between classes, our interview periodically interrupted with announcements about Picture Day.
Oh, sorry.
May I have your attention, please? This is the last call.
Life feels like it's finally back to normal for the 39-year-old Joplin mom of two after a frightening ordeal beginning in December of 2021 during every morning run.
Fluttering in your chest to the point where I would get like a cold sweat and I felt like I was immediately going to pass out. There was one morning that was pretty bad where I just felt like I was going to go down and I grabbed a fence post that was close.
She went to a doctor in Joplin who fitted her with a wearable heart monitor.
And they actually did tell me, we want you to go ahead and run.
She ran with it for a week before turning the monitor back in. A few hours later, she got an urgent call from the hospital.
The ER doctor that's here read your Holter and you do not run anymore. You've had 202 episodes of like a ventricular tachycardia. And I, at one point, had reached like 280 beats per minute. They were like, honestly, you could have died. It was that bad.
Diagnosed with ventricular tachycardia, her Joplin doctor then sent her to Dr. Seth Sheldon at the University of Kansas Health System.
I could tell he cared and he knew exactly my case. And he was very, very good at describing, here's what I think it is. Here's what my plan of action is. And like making me a priority of like, I'm going to fix you.
Dr. Sheldon performed a cardioablation and installed a subcutaneous defibrillator to detect and stop future tachycardia episodes. And he determined the cause, myocarditis, inflammation of Brittany's heart. As for what caused the myocarditis,
so Dr. Sheldon ordered a genetic test.
The test revealed nothing in Brittany's family history, but she revealed something in her own history to Dr. Sheldon: 3 previous COVID-19 infections.
And Brittany Claborn joins us this morning along with cardiologist Dr. Madhu Reddy. He is also Division Chief of Electrophysiology here at the University of Kansas Health System. Dr. Reddy, thank you so much for being with us. Before we jump in, though, just a reminder to our audience, you can send us questions via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and email. Find us online by using the links right there on your screen. And one quick vocabulary note. We just heard doctors diagnosed Brittany with ventricular tachycardia, that is commonly referred to as VTAC. So expect to hear VTAC in place of ventricular tachycardia this morning. Brittany, so take us back to the first hints that something was wrong with your heart. What did it actually feel like while you were running?
So obviously being a runner for a while, any time of feeling like I was really, really out of breath, like I mentioned in the package, the fluttering in my chest. And the first time it ever happened, like my extremities just kind of went numb and I got a cold sweat and was honestly felt sick. Like maybe I'm getting sick. So I just stopped to recover and like many other runners just thought, oh, this is a fluke thing, and just kept trying. I was at like mile 3 or 4, had to make it back home. So I stopped to recover and just kept trying to run again and make it home. And each time it was like this just overwhelming feeling of a sensation. And it wasn't like a hurt in my chest, but I could just tell something was off. Like I just could not recover like I properly should after stopping from a run. And it just, each time it happened, it continued to be the same thing. Like it would start in the chest and then the numbness of the extremities and the cold sweat. And so it was the same symptoms each time that I being a runner long enough shouldn't be one of those things where, on a treadmill it says stop and recover, let your doctor know. And I'm like, I've done this for 15 years. Like, what's going on?
So when did you let your doctor know? When did you decide that you needed to see someone, that this just simply was not normal, it was going on too long?
So when it happened the first time in December, I really did chalk it up to, I think I'm getting sick. And I stayed home from school that day, and I actually ended up getting ill. And to which case, we're pretty sure that was another round of COVID at that point. And I stayed home. And so I really thought I was just sick. So it happened a few more times in December. And I run with a girl that works at Mercy Hospital. And so I just said, I'm just in my gut, I don't feel good about it. She said, why don't you come in when I'm working? And she does radiology. And she said, why don't you just come in and see one of, the doctors or nurse practitioners there? So I actually went in, I think it was January 3rd. So it had happened for about 2-3 weeks. And then I saw somebody on January 3rd. They did an echo at that point, just in the the clinic that I went to. And it was then that the journey started, because the nurse practitioner said, I don't really like your echo for being a 39-year-old runner. Like, it just doesn't look normal. And then that's when, the road started to me getting a Holter monitor to wear, and they even did an echocardiogram, and actually that turned out great, and my heart looked awesome. So then, of course, I kind of pushed off the Holter monitor, thinking, oh, it's anxiety, it's sickness, it's something. And it was until I finally wore the Holter monitor, which actually wasn't until February, that we finally detected the VTAC.
So I want to bring in Dr. Reddy. And first of all, I have to say, you're a cardiologist, but help us better understand what an electrophysiologist does. If somebody needs to go see one, what's wrong with them?
So electrophysiologist is nothing but an electrician of the heart. So heart is a pump, and like any pump, it works in response to electricity, and heart is an electrical organ. So electrophysiologists are who specialize in the electrical system of the heart. And when you see an electrophysiologist, when you have heart rhythm disorders, and sometimes it's difficult to tell that you have a heart rhythm disorder, the most common symptom that people have when they have heart rhythm disorders are palpitations. So when you see that your heart is racing unnecessarily or more than what it should to the activity that you're doing, like in Brittany's case, you can assume that there may be something wrong with your heart, and that's the electrical system of the heart, and that's when we get into the picture.
I love that, an electrician for the heart, just like you have an electrician for everything else that needs to be fixed. Yeah. So Brittany was asked to wear that heart monitor, Dr. Reddy. She's asked to go about her normal life, if that's possible, when you're having all of these issues. And then doctors are going to monitor those results. So what are doctors looking for in those results?
So when we put in those patches on the monitor, it is recording the electrical activity of the heart all the time. One of the issues with the electrical problem is that you can't see it all the time. We need to unmask it by doing activities, and sometimes you may go in and out of it. And if you're checking your like an EKG in the clinic or wearing a watch and taking an EKG, it may look completely normal.
So that's normal.
That's completely that's Brittany's EKG. It looks normal when you do on a steady state condition. But at the same time, when you unmask it during the situations like Brittany running, you can see the rhythm which is on the lower aspect of the picture is abnormal rhythm, which is ventricular tachycardia. If you see the spikes, each heartbeat has a spike. We are almost having 2 to 3 times more spikes in the lower strip compared to the upper strip.
So that's the fluttering that she felt.
Yes.
That's what's actually happening inside her heart.
Yeah.
So, Brittany, first of all, I have to say, you found Dr. Seth Sheldon here, and he said, we're going to fix you. And that must have felt like music to your ears, I would imagine, right?
Yes.
So I want to ask you, your doctor in Joplin recommended you come here. Tell us kind of what that process is like. You're a couple hours away, then you're meeting a new doctor here. Kind of how did that all work out, and just kind of explain that process for us.
Yes. So the first doctor I actually went to was a cardiologist, and he even went in to look at what he called the plumbing of my heart to see if there were any blockages, and that checked out. So he sent me to an electrophysiologist here in Joplin, and he reviewed all of my records and things, and I was hoping to go in that day and him tell me, like, okay, here's our next plan of action, because I just wanted to be back to normal. And he immediately was like, listen, I would love to send you to KU Med, because I honestly think that this is something that he had, I think, referred people to Dr. Sheldon before, but he was like, I really would like for you to see Dr. Sheldon, because I think that he could be an expert in this for you and get you back to where you are hoping and wanting to be. And so he referred me, and his office did, and I figured it would be this long waiting period. And actually, I feel like I saw him at the end of March, and then I had an appointment with Dr. Sheldon within 2 weeks. So it went fairly quickly. So I immediately, took a personal day and went off and went up to KU, and it was amazing because they got all of my scans scheduled for that day. And when I went in to see him, he knew full well my whole scope of history, and he had a plan of action like that day. So it was so refreshing, because while it felt like an eternity in my mind, because I had stopped running in February and was told basically no exercise whatsoever, because mine was exercise induced. And so he already had me scheduled down for cardiac ablations. And in Joplin, they don't do those types of cardiac ablations. So that was also a trigger to send me on to KU. But he already had me on the schedule, and the ICD was one of those that was always a last resort type thing of, let me get in there and do the cardiac ablations and let's see what goes on and happens, and then discussed that with me. And he also put me in a life vest until this surgery, the cardiac ablations. So,
Dr. Reddy, why does VTAC happen? In Brittany's case, she had an inflamed heart, myocarditis, but is that the only thing that causes that? What other things could this come from?
Yeah. So VTAC, as I mentioned, is an abnormal rhythm from the lower chambers of the heart. And the most common reason why people have VTAC is prior heart attack. Some people have a heart attack in the past. They can have VTAC as a long-term consequence of that heart attack. Heart is an electrical organ, as I mentioned. So what happens is when you have inflammation, or if you have a heart attack, the muscle of the heart gets damaged. And when the muscle gets damaged, the electrical fibers in the muscle also get damaged. And because of that, you can have some short circuits. And when the short circuits happen, at times, especially with exercise and sometimes randomly, the short circuits can connect each other and create this VTAC. It's something like the dog chasing its tail in a spiral fashion. So that when that happens, the heart goes really fast. And when the electricity and the heart is trying to beat that fast, it doesn't beat properly. There's no blood pumping out as effective as you would normally see, and people can pass out and potentially die of it too.
This is why I love you. You explain things that I can understand. A dog chasing its tail. I have 2 of them, so I know what that looks like. I can visualize this happening. So I want to see some scans of Brittany's heart. Let's show folks what this looks like, and then just tell us what we're seeing here.
Yeah. So these are the scans which were obtained from during the ablation procedure. What we are trying to see is that we go and sample different segments of the heart to see how the electrical activity is. Something not as common as what Brittany had is that the electrical activity from inside the heart looked good, which is on the left side. Pink is healthy. Red is abnormal signals, that is scarring. So if you look at the left-sided image, it's all looking pink and bright, so that's healthy. But the image on the right is actually the image which is obtained by mapping the outer wall of our heart. And that's where you can see those patchy red scarring, and the green is actually somewhere in between. One of the important aspects of this is the scar is not uniform. So that's where the short circuits can happen. So you have a red scar, and then you have that green color patchy scarring. And when you have that, there are some fibers which are electrically active, and those are the ones which can cause that VTAC.
So Brittany had mentioned ablation, where you basically create scars on her heart. We hear scar, we think damage, but why scar the heart?
Yeah. Good. That's a good question, because why are we damaging the heart? What it is if you look at the image, if you remember the image what was there before, you can see that the scar is not uniform. And when the scar is not uniform, there are areas which are not mechanically doing what it's supposed to do, but electrically creating this noise or nuisance. So we try to create a more uniform scar in a way that the tissue which is not functioning mechanically or pumping wise, but electrically causing these short circuits, we actually put them to rest so that they don't create those short circuits anymore.
So Brittany finds out she has an inflamed heart but didn't know that, so she had a genetic test done. What do doctors look for in genetic testing for this?
So one of the reasons why Dr. Sheldon wanted the genetic test to be done is because it's an unusual pattern of scarring. This is not the scar that we would normally see if someone has a heart attack. So, and especially with our age, we always worry about some genetic conditions where people can have some genetic abnormalities in the electrical, ion channels and genes, which can cause this short circuits, cause this scarring, which is myocarditis. So you can have a genetic myocarditis, genetic cardiomyopathy, and that's what we were looking for. Fortunately, her genetic test turned out to be good.
Brittany, let's talk COVID, because you had it several times, and it sounds like you had it pretty rough. Tell us what that was like and how that affected you. And I know you're a teacher, so that must have made it even worse.
Yes. As you know, schools, we reopened, and it's just little germs everywhere. So I was pretty sure contracted with it at least 3 times. And honestly, it wasn't one of those that I went into the hospital, or it was more like a flu. And of course, being a teacher, stayed home to protect those around me, of course. But it wasn't anything where I went into the hospital or had it so bad that I was non-functioning. It was like the flu for me. So that's why I didn't immediately connect the dots, like, oh, maybe COVID is damage to my heart or something. This was all new territory for me. But it was honestly the first round I got in 2020 after we returned to school. And then it was the last 2 rounds that were like December and January. Like I got them real close back to back that I think really just caused the most damage, I guess I would say. But also learned through all of that, don't run through when you're sick. Or Dr. Sheldon was very like, if you have flu-like symptoms or a fever, don't run. And so I've tried to broadcast that to all of my runner friends too, because that can apparently start to cause some of that myocarditis and hurt your heart in that way. And so that's been my big platform too, of please, if you are sick, don't run through it. I always felt like I could run through it, and I felt so much better when I was done. But really, it's just the endorphins that are making me feel good and not necessarily making my heart feel good. So,
yeah, that false sense that you were getting from the high of running. Dr. Reddy, it was new territory for everyone, but we want to clarify, because we've heard about myocarditis and people ask questions a lot about the connection with COVID. We can't say for sure that that's what led to Brittany's myocarditis, but is it a possibility? Are we learning anything more about this?
Yeah, it is a possibility. Definitely COVID has been associated with myocarditis. Early on, we probably thought it was more common, but when we have more data, we've done MRI in patients with COVID, there is a definite chance of it being related to COVID, but the pattern is a little different. The location of where the scarring is, we can never say, we can never go back and confirm that, but there is always a possibility.
Brittany had an implant called an SICD. What is that, Dr. Reddy?
So ICD, it's an implantable cardiac defibrillator. It's like the AEDs that we have it in different places, including the gyms in school. Basically, when your heart goes into this VTAC and the short circuit is happening, one of the ways we can stop it is by shocking the heart. So ICD, or a defibrillator, is something we implant in patients who have high risk for having this VTAC, like Brittany's scenario. Even though she had the ablation and the VTAC has been eradicated at that time, there is a risk of she having VTAC going forward, and to protect her from that VTAC, we have the ICD. Now there are different types of ICDs, two main types. The traditional ICD is the one which we put through the veins, and there are wires in the heart. Generally, when patients are young, trying to manage a wire which is in the heart for the rest of their life can be complicated because wires can break and anything can go wrong, and taking it out is a bigger deal. So we try to put subcutaneous ICD where everything is under the skin and not in the vascular system. It's not touching the heart and interferes less with physical activity and so forth. So that's what Brittany got.
So that's there to stay for Brittany?
That's there to stay for Brittany, yes.
For a lifetime.
Right.
So Brittany, what's it like having this device? Tell us what it feels like, and do you feel better?
I feel great. I'm back to running and feeling normal. At first, it was quite painful, just to be honest, when it got put in. But now my body is just adjusted. I can feel it under my arm, but honestly, as Dr. Sheldon had said, I'll end up forgetting that it was there. And I obviously see it, but even like this summer on vacations, my family was like, honestly, I don't see it. Like, I think you're just more critical of it than anybody else. So it's just literally on the side of my body, and it's become a part of me. It doesn't hurt. After I healed from the initial, obviously putting it in, it became just something that was there like anything else. And it protrudes a little bit, but it doesn't show enough where people just like stare at it or something. But it doesn't hurt at this point, and I'm running and I've not had any shocks or episodes again. It's honestly one of those things where it was a last resort, and I was pretty upset when he recommended to put it in. But now it's one of those things that I don't have anxiety to go out and run anymore. And I feel like it's a safety net of like, if it were to come back again or something, then it will save my life. So
yeah, it's part of your story now.
Yes.
So you mentioned you're running. Are you running like you used to?
I am. I am not quite like pushing we used to do long runs every weekend and do 10 to 13 miles or something. I'm up to running about 25 to 30 miles a week, and mostly just trying to enjoy it again because it was taken for a while. And of course, when something's taken from you, you miss it even more. And so honestly, this time around, it's been like something that I just enjoy doing again. And every time I go out, I praise Jesus that he allowed me to have this journey to obviously save my life, but also help somebody else that could possibly hear this and know that it is a priority, and to take care of yourself. And through a journey, it'll become a distant memory. And Dr. Sheldon kept promising me, I promise I will get you back to, a normal, healthy life. And I'm here today, and I'm running, and it's almost like it's not even there other than the ICD. So it's been great after the whole mess to begin with. So.
Well, you're helping people as you speak this morning. Dr. Reddy, good for her to be back running again. No concerns?
No concerns at this time.
That's good. She's doing what she's supposed to be doing. Dr. Sheldon kept his promise. All right, let's get a quick check on our daily COVID count. Dr. Nathan Barr joining us in now for Dr. Hawkinson. Dr. Barr, good to see you this morning. It's been a minute. How are you?
Yes, yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So we have 25 active cases, 5 of those unfortunately needing ICU care, and 3 requiring the ventilator. We also have a number of cases that are out of that active phase, but 49 in total. So we still have a lot of people with COVID in the hospital, and a number of them very, very sick in the intensive care unit, unfortunately.
Yeah, we've had viewers ask those numbers are just concerning. People in the ICU, on ventilators, what does that all mean? Yeah. Which brings me to my point. I want to get your reaction about this week's news from the White House. Yeah. Federal government winding down the national COVID-19 emergency declaration coming up in May. So we've been under emergency declaration for the last 3 years now. Yeah. What do you expect will change with this?
Well, I mean, you sort of have gotten the sense this is coming for a while, right? There's sort of been a number of times where they've let it go like very, very close to running out and then said, okay, we'll keep it another month or two. So, you knew this was coming. Obviously, the way society in general is handling this is quite different than it was. So that's not an unexpected change, I suppose. There are going to be big changes, though, and I think, this emergency declaration allows resources to be available that otherwise are not, and so, some of those will go away, and some of the things that have continued to be free because the government's paying for them, that's going to stop. And, part of why that's stopping is because Congress has not re-upped any funding for that for quite a while, and that money's running out, but part of it's going to be related to this emergency declaration stopping. So yeah, there will be changes, and probably there will be situations where folks will get COVID and get sick and we'll want to give them certain medicines, and all of a sudden it'll be like, unfortunately, most other decisions with medications that are new, and money's going to sadly become part of it for a lot of folks.
Well, and so we're not in crisis mode. We're taking that out of the equation. COVID deaths, though, are still happening. We see it in our numbers.
Yeah.
We see people still in the hospital, like I said,
Yep.
in the ICU, on ventilators. More than 20,000 deaths in January. That's according to CDC data. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's significant. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the world we live in here at our health system and across
Yep.
the health systems in the U.S. So I mean, one death is too many.
That's right, and I mean, it's kind of all relative, right? When this all started, that kind of number would have terrified us all, and did terrify us all. Of course, since then we've been through these waves where that's a smaller number.
Right.
So it's good that less people are dying, but man, yeah, that's still a lot.
All right, let's check. Dr. Barr, thank you so much. Let's see if we have any reporters today. Let's get to our viewer questions. Yen Lang wants to know, is Marfan syndrome related to our topic today? Dr. Reddy, what is that?
Marfan syndrome is a genetic condition where there's an abnormality which in one of the genes that actually runs in the family. It affects the heart and the body in multiple ways. People are quite tall with long fingers. From the cardiovascular standpoint, it actually affects the aorta of the heart, where the aorta gets enlarged and you can have aortic dissection. There are features of people who have Marfan's, and if it runs in the family, definitely everyone in the family needs to be screened for that. And there are genetic tests and clinical examinations that can confirm the diagnosis.
Susan wants to know, she said she had similar symptoms like you, Brittany, when she went on a weekend hike in Colorado, went to the ER, had some testing done, EKG showed inverted T waves, but everything else was normal, so no follow-up was recommended. Her question is, can elevation cause myocarditis?
Typically not. So
Okay.
we have not seen, if you exert for a long period of time continuously, you can have some heart muscle damage, but just by going on hikes and elevation, it is not associated with myocarditis.
So should she have a follow-up? Should she get a second opinion?
If she's having fluttering symptoms and continues to have them, yes, definitely. I think when we have fluttering, you can have the fluttering sensation when we are exerting ourselves, when you have low oxygen, when you're not used to the level of exertion that we are doing. But it could be a normal rhythm going fast. So the difference is it a normal rhythm which is going fast, or is it an abnormal rhythm that is going fast? And that it is difficult to tell just by EKG in a steady state or just by the symptoms, and that's where a monitor would help.
So on that note, Dave wants to know, sometimes I feel heart fluttering, but it goes away on its own. How do I know to go see a doctor?
Yeah, so if the fluttering happens for no reason, I think you should see a doctor, because we can do the same monitoring and catch that episode when you're having the fluttering and correlate it with the electrical activity of the heart and see if it is an abnormal rhythm which is causing the fluttering.
Okay, all good to know. Let's get to final thoughts from our guests today. Brittany, thank you so much for being with us, taking a time away from those kids this morning. I'm sure they're going to be super interested to know why you are on TV today. But so tell them all about it. But just your final thoughts today. You talk about how you wanted to get your message out there and hopefully help someone else, save a life. Final message to our viewers.
Well, I definitely want to thank KU and Dr. Sheldon for, I would say, saving my life. I had amazing care by nurses, doctors, staff, everybody there. So I want to say thank you for that. And yes, I felt like God put me on this journey for a reason. Maybe if it's just to save one person's life. So just in her saying the inverted T wave, I had the same exact thing. And because my echo checked out, I thought it was fine. But that's been my big thing of like, don't run when you feel sick, and if you have anything go on with your heart, just check into it. And although the Holter monitor might be annoying, I was there, it can definitely save your life. So I would hate for anybody at all, but especially young runners or athletes that I continuously hear having sudden cardiac death. That was a possibility for me. And so I just want to make sure that people are not ignoring those signs, and even just like doctor said, go get it checked out and just wear the Holter monitor. Let them read it. It's annoying for 48 hours or a week, but it can save your life, especially if it is VTAC, and that there is an answer for it. There are doctors that can fix it, and an ICD that can be put in to save your life as well. So that would be my big thing, is don't ignore it, and just make sure that you're staying healthy.
Brittany, thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Reddy, final thoughts.
Yeah, I would echo Brittany's comments. Fluttering sensation is a very common thing. 5-10 years ago, it was difficult. We didn't have tools and monitors to monitor most people. But now, including a wearable watch, we can do monitoring on a continuous basis with simpler tools. The monitor which Brittany wore was a little more burdensome, I would understand, but these days we also have simpler minimalistic monitors where you just put a patch and then we can capture continuous rhythm. So the key is, if you're having palpitations and fluttering sensation, it's generally related to your heart beating faster, and it is always a good idea to get it checked out with an electrocardiogram and a monitor.
Dr. Reddy, good to see you today. Thank you so much.
Most welcome.
Dr. Barr, final thoughts.
Yeah, well, I suppose, let's see, I'm an infectious disease doctor, so I'm not going to give a bunch of heart advice. That would be kind of foolish.
Please don't.
No, yeah, we got people for that, right? Dr. Reddy can handle that for sure.
But you're going to just give us some good words of wisdom.
Yeah, well,
What do you got?
the one thing I guess I would say is when we talk about myocarditis and COVID being a potential cause here, I would just remind everybody, we've known that link between COVID and myocarditis for a while, and I would also just point out that, there's concern, has been for a long time with COVID vaccination and myocarditis, and there is a small increased risk with certain groups, young adolescent men in particular, or young adolescents in particular, but it's much higher from COVID than it is from the vaccine. So I just think maybe that's the point I should drive home, is that that risk is there. It's very small, but it's much higher with COVID. So just to emphasize again, these vaccines are pretty darn safe, and if we can avoid a bad case, that's the way to go.
Great message. See, you made the heart connection.
Yeah, I tried.
Good job. I love it. Good to see you today. All right, you've got to stick around and watch this story, because we are privileged to work here with some pretty incredible colleagues at the University of Kansas Health System, and we love to highlight some of them in our segment we call Behind the Mask. Alexis Delcit introduces us to someone who is always out there with a smile and has an extra pep in his step.
How y'all doing, everybody?
With his slick dance moves and his signature shout-out,
Yes, yes, yes.
Shaquille Frazier, who goes by Shaq,
Light him up, my man.
lights up every space he enters at the University of Kansas Health System, where you'll see him on any given day working as a housekeeper.
Light him up.
And Shaq never misses a beat.
Wrap to the left, stop to the right, go to the window, go to the side. Go. I think every time I bring smile to anyone's face, I think I've fulfilled my purpose for that day. I always put on the gloves.
He's the one restocking the hospital carts and closets,
We do this daily.
pulling the dirty linens,
The job is never done.
and removing and transporting all the hospital waste to the proper places. It's a huge job.
Like my man John Legend says, take it slow.
And Shaq takes great pride in doing it.
Everyone plays a critical part in how the hospital runs. I think it's one of the best jobs I've ever had.
By every account, he does it flawlessly.
He's a hard worker. He's never in a bad mood. He listens. He leads. He's a fantastic employee. I take 10 of Shaq. How about that?
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you, Sarah.
Keeps everything pulled nice and neat. We don't have to call. He's always here. He's just awesome to work with.
Y'all have a beautiful day now.
Moving from floor to floor, department to department,
What's up? How are you? Pretty good, my man.
interacting with hundreds of other employees, patients, and visitors every day.
Light them up all the way to the top. Now stop like that.
Not only is Shaq a source of joy for so many, but on an even deeper level, he's a source of inspiration.
I have a son that has autism. He's 11, and he's nonverbal, and Shaq gives me so much hope for my son.
But Shaq is just being Shaq, doing a job he loves, with people he loves, who love him right back.
We aim to please. We aim to make sure everyone has the best possible experience here.
Alexis, you do a lot of amazing, you do so many good stories. I always say, oh, I love that story. Can I just say that might be my favorite? Is that okay to say that?
I think it's okay. It's Shaq.
Okay.
Because he makes
It's
everybody
Shaq.
happy.
I'm smiling so much, my eyes are watering.
Yeah.
I just love him.
Right.
You can't help it.
Right. And
I could
he
watch
was
that
very
again
pleased.
and again.
He was very pleased with the story. He was flattered. He was surprised. But we're not surprised because he's amazing. And I love coming to work. There's a certain time of the day if I go to get a coffee, I can hear him coming down the hallway and I look and people are fist bumping him and saying hi.
Love it.
It's so much fun. So it's just great. It's really cool to work with someone like that.
It is. We need more Shaqs around. He is one of a kind. Okay, something really cool though is coming up because season 3 of All Things Heart begins today at 10 o'clock here in just about an hour and a half. Tell us what's coming up on your first episode. This is going to be a good one.
It's a good one, Jess. We're taking a deep dive into women's heart health, specifically one woman who's a patient here, and she has a pretty big goal.
I would like to be the first in my family to break 100 years.
Oh, and did I mention she's our boss here at the Medical News Network? So we're not surprised she wants to live past 100. That's kind of how Jill Chadwick rolls, right? She lives life full throttle. But recently, Jill had to make a trip to the cardiologist here for a racing heart. And that was alarming for her because she'd already been diagnosed years ago with a heart condition. However, it turns out instead of prescribing her something to take, the cardiologist prescribed she stop doing something else, something that is so common for so many of us. This is an episode every woman needs to see coming up at 10 a.m. on All Things Heart.
Oh, now I'm trying to figure out what she's stopped doing. I know her habit's pretty good here in the office, so I'm trying to figure out what has she stopped doing.
Because stop isn't in her vocabulary. Right?
I know, exactly. 100. She'll blow past that. You know she will. She'll outlive us all. All right, Alexis, we'll be watching at 10 o'clock this morning, so we'll see you then, okay?
See you
then.
then.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Make it a good one.
Coming up tomorrow on the Morning Medical Update. Where can you turn when your doctor doesn't believe you? I'm Jessica Lovell, coming up on the next Morning Medical Update. Multiple scans and tests came back negative, but one patient knew she wasn't imagining the pain, the condition and treatment that finally gave her relief. That's Friday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now everywhere podcasts are available.